Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. Here, we would like to discuss with everyone a particularly thought-provoking topic from the Three Kingdoms period. After Zhuge Liang's death, why didn't his longtime rival Sima Yi take the opportunity to attack the state of Shu? According to historical records, the Three Kingdoms era was one of the most fascinating chapters in Chinese history. It was an age full of heroes, where warlords vied for supremacy in a land torn by war, and where wisdom and courage intertwined to create an epic tapestry of history. Especially thanks to Li Hongzhang's romance of the Three Kingdoms, this period has become widely known. Each character in the novel feels like a superstar stepping straight out of history. Among them were ambitious leaders like Liu Bei, Cao Cao, and Sun Quan. Brilliant strategists like Zhuge Liang, Zhou Yu, and Sun Yu. And fearless warriors like Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Zhao Yun. Their stories are filled with blood-pumping excitement and intelligence. And people still talk about them with enthusiasm today. Among all these figures, the Prime Minister of Shu, Zhuge Liang, is undoubtedly the undisputed superstar. His intelligence was unparalleled, earning him the title Wulong, Crouching Dragon, which means a hidden dragon of great power. His strategic brilliance shone not only on the battlefield, but also in governance and calming the people. Zhuge Liang helped Liu Bei establish the Shu Han state. And after Liu Bei's death, he shouldered the heavy burden of restoring the Han dynasty. Throughout his life, Zhuge Liang faced many opponents, the two most famous being Zhou Yu of Eastern Wu and Sima Yi of Wei. Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang had an interesting relationship. They were both rivals and allies. They belonged to different states, Shu and Wu, and often engaged in battles of wit and strategy. For example, before the Battle of Red Cliffs, Zhuge Liang's legendary act of borrowing the east wind left Zhou Yu both impressed and frustrated. However, the two also joined forces at Red Cliffs to defeat Cao Cao, creating one of the most iconic battles of the Three Kingdoms period. Unfortunately, Zhou Yu died young, leaving the stage of history in his early 30s. And his famous lament, "Since there is Zhou Yu, why must there be Zhuge Liang?" still resonates with readers today. In comparison, the confrontation between Sima Yi and Zhuge Liang was more like a clash between evenly matched chess masters. Sima Yi, as the Grand Commander of Wei, was no less wise or courageous than anyone. He was calm, composed, and excellent at biding his time. His direct confrontations with Zhuge Liang spanned much of the later period of the Three Kingdoms, especially during Zhuge Liang's 5 northern expeditions. Sima Yi was almost always the one who stood in his way. Their battles of wits produced many brilliant and legendary stories. However, what's strange is that after Zhuge Liang passed away and Shu lost its central pillar of support, Wei did not launch an attack. Logically, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So why did Sima Yi hold back his troops? To answer this question, we need to unpack the historical context step by step, and try to understand what Sima Yi was really thinking. Let's start with the background. In 223 AD, Liu Bei died in Baidi City. And on his deathbed, he entrusted the fate of Shu to Zhuge Liang, hoping he would assist the young Emperor Liu Shan and revive the Han dynasty. Zhuge Liang, loyal to the core, took on this almost impossible task. At that time, the situation for Shu was far from optimistic. Wei controlled the central plains, had a large population, abundant resources, and a powerful army. It was the strongest of the Three Kingdoms. Wu had its own territory as well, mainly in the Jiangnan region, but its strength was slightly weaker than Wei's. Shu, on the other hand, had the smallest territory and the fewest people, barely surviving in the Sichuan region, relying on natural barriers for defense. If Shu had merely tried to hold on to its territory, it would eventually have been gradually consumed by Wei. Zhuge Liang understood this very well. He knew that defense alone was not enough. He had to take the initiative to create a chance at survival. So, he first spent great effort quelling the rebellion in the south, securing the rear of Shu. At that time, the Nanzhong region, what is now Yunnan and Guizhou, was home to many ethnic tribes who frequently caused trouble. Zhuge Liang used the strategy of 7 captures and 7 releases to win over the tribal leader Menghua, thus bringing lasting peace to Shu's southern frontier. This not only showed his military skill, but also his generous and wise political leadership. Once the rear was stable, Zhuge Liang began planning his northern expeditions, with the goal of recovering the central plains and fulfilling Liu Bei's last wish. The northern expeditions were by no means an easy task. The power gap between Shu and Wei was like that between an elementary school student and a university student. Completely different levels. But Zhuge Liang still decided to take the gamble, because he knew that if Shu didn't take the initiative, it would eventually be swallowed by Wei. Zhuge Liang launched a total of 5 northern expeditions, spanning from 228 AD to 234 AD. And he gave everything he had in each one. During the first expedition, Zhuge Liang appointed Ma Su to guard Jiating. But Ma Su disobeyed military orders and lost the crucial stronghold. The Shu army was forced to retreat. This failure pained Zhuge Liang deeply. He even personally executed Ma Su to maintain military discipline. In the second expedition, Zhuge Liang attacked Qinsong. Qinsong was a highly defensible location. And although Wei's commander Hao Zhao had few troops, his defenses were flawless. The Shu army besieged the city for a long time without success. Eventually, with Wei reinforcements approaching and Shu's supplies depleted, Zhuge Liang had no choice but to retreat once again. During the third expedition, the Shu army finally made some gains, capturing the regions of Wudu and Yinping. But Wei quickly launched a counterattack, sending a large army to threaten Hanzhong. Zhuge Liang personally took charge of defending Hanzhong, strengthening the city's defenses. With high morale, the Shu army managed to repel the Wei forces. In the fourth expedition, the Shu army once again attacked Qishan, defeating part of the Wei army. However, the logistical issues persisted, and the campaign once again ended in withdrawal. In all these expeditions, although the Shu army achieved some minor victories, they ultimately failed due to supply problems. At the time, some people in Wei speculated that Zhuge Liang would return the next year with another campaign. But Sima Yi had a longer-term perspective. He said that Zhuge Liang always retreated due to lack of provisions. So when he returned, he would likely focus on developing agriculture and storing grain. Without 3 years of preparation, he would not come again. Sure enough, after returning to Shu, Zhuge Liang encouraged the people to farm, improved agricultural practices, and even personally took the lead in promoting the Tunshan system, military farming colonies. He also improved transportation methods and invented the wooden ox and flowing horse to address the challenge of transporting supplies. After 3 years of preparation, in 234 AD, Zhuge Liang launched his 5th northern expedition. This time, he chose to confront the Wei army in the area around the Wei River. Sima Yi led his forces across the river and camped with their backs to the river, clearly preparing for a long-term, defensive posture. Zhuge Liang issued multiple challenges to battle, but Sima Yi refused to engage, remaining as steady as a mountain. Zhuge Liang had no choice but to order his troops to farm on the spot, preparing for a prolonged campaign, while also sending envoys to the Wei camp to provoke Sima Yi. Interestingly, when Sima Yi received the envoy, he didn't talk about the war at first. Instead, he inquired about Zhuge Liang's daily life, asking whether he was busy and how he was eating. The envoy replied that Zhuge Liang personally handled everything, big and small, and was extremely busy every day. But his appetite had been getting smaller and smaller. After hearing this, Sima Yi privately told his subordinates, "If Zhuge Liang continues like this, I fear he won't live much longer." Sure enough, the tragic news soon arrived. Zhuge Liang died of illness at Wuzhang Plains, at the age of 54. Upon hearing the news, the Shu army immediately retreated. Sima Yi sent troops to pursue the retreating Shu army, but the Shu commander Yang Yi set up a clever ruse. He had someone dress in Zhuge Liang's robes, holding a feather fan and standing among the troops, pretending that Zhuge Liang was still alive. When Sima Yi saw this, he was startled and immediately ordered a retreat, allowing the Shu army to return home safely. This incident was later dramatized in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms as "The dead Zhuge scares away the living Sima." Though somewhat exaggerated, it illustrates just how tremendous Zhuge Liang's influence was. And thus, Zhuge Liang's fifth northern expedition ended with his death. For the sake of Liu Bei's dying wish, he gave his all to challenge the powerful state of Wei. But the gap in strength between Shu and Wei was simply too large. Even with Zhuge Liang's brilliance, it was hard to change the course of history. Sima Yi, on the other hand, adopted a steady and methodical strategy, fully leveraging Wei's advantages and successfully blocking Shu's advances. After Zhuge Liang's death, Shu lost its central pillar of support. Logically, this would have been an ideal moment for Wei to destroy Shu. But Sima Yi did not launch an invasion. Instead, he shifted his focus elsewhere. Why? First of all, although Wei was the strongest of the three kingdoms, it had its own troubles. In the northeastern region of Liaodong, the Gongsun clan was a major problem. Gongsun Yuan, having inherited his father's power, refused to obey Wei's commands and even declared himself king, allying with northern nomadic tribes and frequently harassing Wei's borders. Wei Emperor Qianlong sent Sima Yi to pacify Liaodong. As expected of a top strategist, Sima Yi thoroughly analyzed the situation before setting out, predicting Gongsun Yuan's possible tactics. He not only made precise military plans, but also anticipated Gongsun Yuan's psychology and escape routes. In the end, he took only a year to pacify Liaodong, restoring stability to Wei's northern frontier. This campaign was a brilliant success for Sima Yi and further solidified his standing in the imperial court. But interestingly, even after his victory in Liaodong, Sima Yi did not propose an invasion of Shu, choosing instead to continue observing the broader political landscape. Behind this decision lay a deeper strategic consideration. After the Liaodong campaign, Sima Yi returned to the court, and found that Wei's internal politics were far from stable. When Emperor Qianlong died, the young emperor ascended the throne, and Sima Yi was appointed co-regent alongside Qiao Shuang, a member of the royal family. Relying on his imperial lineage, Qiao Shuang gradually seized power, marginalizing Sima Yi and eventually transferring him to the nominal role of Grand Marshal, a position without real authority. Sima Yi pretended to be ill, while secretly amassing power behind the scenes. By keeping a low profile, Sima Yi slowly lulled Qiao Shuang into complacency. Eventually, in 249 AD, during the incident at Gaoping Tombs, Sima Yi launched a swift and decisive coup, eliminating Qiao Shuang and taking control of the Wei government. This masterstroke showcased Sima Yi's extraordinary political acumen. Not only was he a brilliant military strategist, he was also a shrewd and calculating politician. Yet, even after consolidating power and removing Qiao Shuang, Sima Yi still never proposed attacking Shu. By the time of his death in 251 AD, the state of Shu remained unscathed. Why? The answer wouldn't come until 30 years later. When Sima Zhao, Sima Yi's son, finally launched a campaign to conquer Shu. In 263 AD, Sima Zhao decided to invade Shu, dispatching a total of 180,000 troops in 3 separate forces. Although Shu had natural barriers, its overall strength was far inferior to Wei's, and it had no means to resist effectively. Wei General Zhong Hui, leading the main force of 120,000 troops, launched a fierce attack on Hongzhang, quickly breaking through Shu's defenses. Shu General Jian Wei retreated to Jiang Pass, hoping to rely on the rugged terrain to block the Wei army. However, another Wei general, Deng Ai, came up with a bold plan. He led an elite unit, secretly crossed the Yinping mountain range, and made a surprise march straight toward Chengdu, the Shu capital. This plan was extremely risky. The path from Yinping to Chengdu was nothing but towering mountains and wilderness, with no proper roads at all. Deng Ai, leading his troops, braved treacherous mountains and terrain, even wrapped himself in blankets and rolled down slopes to speed up the descent. Eventually arriving near Chengdu, the Shu emperor and his ministers had never imagined that the Wei army would come from this route, and they were caught completely off guard. General Jiang Wei was still fiercely defending Jiang Pass, and had no time to return and provide reinforcements. In the end, Liu Shan surrendered in Chengdu, and the state of Shu officially fell. After the fall of Shu, Sima Zhao said something that revealed his father's long-held view. Even with someone as brilliant as Zhuge Liang, Shu could not last long. Now that Zhuge Liang is gone, how could they possibly endure? What did this mean? In truth, Sima Yi had already seen through Shu's situation years earlier. In his eyes, as long as Zhuge Liang was alive, Shu could still manage to hold on. Even though the northern expeditions failed, they at least forced Wei to take Shu seriously. But after Zhuge Liang's death, Shu lost its central figure. Though Jiang Wei was capable, he was nowhere near Zhuge Liang's level. Shu became like a crumbling tower, destined to collapse on its own. There was no need for Wei to rush in with an attack. Moreover, the tripartite balance of power in the 3 kingdoms actually benefited Wei to some extent. The existence of Shu and Wu acted as a check on one another, preventing Wei from facing the full might of both enemies at once. On a deeper level, Sima Yi had political calculations. As a high-ranking general holding great military power, he was also subject to the emperor's suspicion. Historically, many loyal and accomplished ministers who grew too powerful met unfortunate ends. Sima Yi understood the ancient saying, "When the cunning hare is dead, the hound is cooked." If he destroyed Shu too early, and there were no external enemies left, the emperor might turn against the Sima family instead. To protect himself and his family, Sima Yi chose to let Shu continue to exist as a pawn to check the imperial authority. This strategy can be described as a textbook example of raising an enemy to strengthen oneself. Later on, Sima Yi's son Sima Zhao inherited his wisdom, and at the right moment, destroyed Shu, laying the foundation for the Sima family to replace the Chao Wei regime and establish the Jian dynasty. It's also worth mentioning that in the campaign to conquer Shu, the greatest credit goes to Deng Ai. His surprise attack through Yinping is considered a miracle in military history. However, not long after his great victory, this war hero met a tragic end. Why did that happen? After the surrender of Shu, Deng Ai engaged in several controversial actions. First, he took it upon himself to issue titles and rewards to Shu's emperor and officials in the name of the Wei emperor. For example, appointing Liu Shan as general of agile cavalry, suggesting he be enfeoffed as the king of Fufeng, and granting official titles to other former Shu ministers. At the time, this was considered a serious overreach. Because only the emperor, or the de facto ruler Sima Zhao, held the authority to confer such honors. Deng Ai's actions made Sima Zhao suspect that he was trying to win over the people of Shu and build his own power base. Second, Deng Ai showed questionable judgment in handling post-war matters. For instance, he ordered that the fallen soldiers of both the Wei and Shu armies be buried together. An attempt to promote reconciliation. But this gesture backfired. People in Shu felt he disrespected their fallen soldiers, while Wei troops believed their sacrifices were being downplayed. This tone-deaf decision offended both sides and damaged his reputation. Lastly, Deng Ai became somewhat arrogant in victory. He submitted a memorial to Sima Zhao, proposing a plan to conquer Wu, even detailing how troops should be deployed, ships built, and the economy developed. While the ideas themselves were not wrong, his tone suggested he had already made the decisions, and only needed to inform Sima Zhao afterward. This presumptuous attitude greatly displeased Sima Zhao. Meanwhile, Zhong Hui, the commander-in-chief of the Wei army, and Wei Guan, the imperial inspector, also began to harbor jealousy toward Deng Ai. Zhong Hui had led the main forces in the conquest of Shu, but Deng Ai had stolen the spotlight. Wei Guan, a trusted aide of Sima Zhao tasked with supervising generals, naturally disapproved of Deng Ai's unauthorized behavior. Together, Zhong Hui and Wei Guan accused Deng Ai of plotting rebellion. Already displeased with Deng Ai, Sima Zhao seized the opportunity and ordered him arrested and sent to Luoyang. Eventually, Wei Guan arranged for Deng Ai to be killed in the chaos, and Deng Ai's entire family was implicated and executed. According to modern historians, the confrontation between Zhuge Liang and Sima Yi during the Three Kingdoms period was a peak clash of intellect and strategy. Zhuge Liang devoted himself entirely to saving Shu, while Sima Yi took a methodical and strategic approach, focusing on long-term planning. Zhuge Liang fought for ideals, while Sima Yi plotted for his family's rise to power. Their rivalry played out as a brilliant drama in Chinese history, a showdown between idealism and realpolitik. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.